Do get online if you can and send her Twitter. But let's go back to these pictures now. I might just get that sound turned down in my ear if you don't mind. It's a little distracting just from the pictures. Thanks so much. Now, we're looking at all of this debris on the ground there, just moving right across Japan, coming from the coastal areas. We see the boats, we see cars, we see mud, all the debris moving through there. Thankfully, a lot of this is farming area, but it is moving into some buildings there, and we saw some ablaze on the ground. I want to go back to Ivan Cabrera, see what additional information
enough, if certainly shallow enough and closer to the shore. Some of these folks in these farmlands and some of these buildings have no idea what is happening right now. They are perhaps 100+ kilometers away from the shore, and they are seeing on a sunny day in Japan this coming in. I mean, unless you're watching TV, unless you're listening to the radio, you're not going to have any idea what's coming up here.
Period of time, I wasn't exactly sure what to do or where to go. I'd never been prepared for anything like this. My wife and I stood outside and basically held on to the outside of our house. You couldn't even stand up. I mean, literally at the peak of these waves that were washing over the ground, you literally could not stay on your feet. You had to kind of crouch down in a ball or put your back against something so you didn't fall. And that's exactly what we did for the length of the duration of it, which I would say was about probably a minute to 2 minutes. It felt like a lot longer than that, let me tell you.
Indeed. And are you saying that you live there, or that you're actually traveling there?
I actually live here. I've lived here for the last 8 years, and I live on the west side of the city in a little section of Tokyo called Kichijoji. And yes, there are earthquakes from time to time.
You've been there for a number of years. I do have to apologize because someone was actually talking in my ear when you mentioned the number of years that you've been there. How long did you say you'd been there?
I've been here for 8 years. My wife is
toward the coast. We've probably witnessed in live TV and all of our global audience.
Four lines. But get in stride a little bit more. But this was larger than anyone expected. It went on for longer than anyone expected. And I think there's also a high degree of self-sufficiency among people here, especially with regards to earthquakes, just as my wife showed, where she was comparing
this to the quake back into...
People are just walking up and down out of high-rises trying to figure out how they're going to get home now, Rosemary.
Indeed. And of course, as you spoke to us, of course, we do need to mention that it is now upgraded to an 8.9 magnitude quake. We can see there, actually, a person there calling for help, basically, with the white flag. They want to be evacuated from their home. They're in fairly high...
That's really going to be the challenge at this point.
Matt Alt, who gave an extraordinary description of his situation as he witnessed this earthquake. He's married to a Japanese lady who was able to take him through it. He was very unnerved by it because she has grown up there. She knew exactly what to do. But this is the situation, isn't it? That people are realizing that this is very different to anything that they may recall in their living memory. This strength, when we heard from Ivan Cabrera, this is the 7th largest earthquake since they have been recorded.
Certainly, but even if you didn't live at the time that there was a huge earthquake, the Great Hanshin earthquake, you grow up learning that a giant earthquake could possibly happen. So let's talk about the person you spoke with, Matt, the American. He must have felt a very different experience from the Japanese wife, because she grew up understanding that the earthquake could happen at any time. You sort of learn that. You learn that from when you're a child. If I could get back to the tsunami as well, along the coastlines, if you've been anywhere along a Japanese coastline, it really is quite different than other coastlines around the world. If you go to a port, even though we're seeing some very, sizable devastation from the tsunami, what's different is that there are structures in place to try to protect the people of the town. Even in a town that could face a tsunami, people learn that they could evacuate at any moment if there is an earthquake. There are systems in place to try to help them get out of there. Now, certainly, if you have a sizable earthquake like what we just experienced, they can't protect everybody. But people in a small fishing village like the one we're seeing that's heavily being impacted